It's a good thing. We're visiting with our next guest, Scott Braddock, editor of quorumreport.com. Scott, welcome back. How are you today?
Doing well, Chad. How are you?
Doing great. We are getting closer and closer to the impeachment trial for Ken Paxton, and there just so happens to be some impeachment, or I guess Ken Paxton news out today.
Yeah, and you can't make this stuff up, Chad. I mean, you could try, but as we often say, it would not be as good as reality, right? I mean, you look at what's gone on here, and you know, and I know, and your listeners know, that the supporters of Ken Paxton have said one thing, they've said a lot of things, but one thing repeatedly, over and over and over and over again about all of this, which is what? That all of this was a surprise to Paxton. Right, that the Texas House acted sort of in secret and then blindsided him with this impeachment. And we know that that's not true based on a lot of things, and there's news out this morning. Dallas Morning News had the text messages between a very conservative Republican lawmaker from North Texas, a guy named Jeff Leach, who you've had on the show, I'm sure, many times,
Yes.
A chairman in the Texas House, who, check me on this, Chad, he's not a liberal, right?
No,
Not at all.
No, absolutely
right.
not.
You have Paxton supporters always saying this is a Democrat-led thing, and that it's liberals who are, leading the charge on this. You have a conservative like Jeff Leach in the mix. Is Briscoe Cain from the Houston area? Is he a liberal?
Far left. No, I'm sorry, Briscoe Cain. No. He's
Far
very
right.
conservative. Yes.
Even some conservatives might say far right if you're talking about Briscoe Cain. He's one of the impeachment managers. Well, there were text messages this morning that go back to the beginning of the year. You remember how this all got kicked off, Chad, was the fact that the Attorney General had asked for the legislature to approve a $3 million expenditure to pay for the settlement between him and the whistleblowers in his office, basically asking for taxpayers to be on the hook for his personal legal problems. And at that time, Chairman Leach had texted with an advisor to Paxton, one of his top advisors, a woman named Michelle Smith, who has worked in his office and on campaigns as well. And they have this back and forth, all these text messages in the Dallas Morning News this morning. They got the information through a public information request. And I'm here to tell you, yeah, I really did. I'm not giving huge praise to politicians almost ever, Chad. I think that's fair too.
Yeah.
I would say it's a profiling courage. If you read the text messages, they're in the Dallas Morning News, they're on Twitter, they're everywhere now. It's a private conversation that is now in the newspaper because of that information request. It's just Leach talking to somebody who he knows. And by the way, Leach has been a friend of Ken Paxton over the years. Both of them are from Collin County. And by the way, they do not elect liberal Republicans from Collin County, Texas. And in the exchange, in this private conversation, Leach is essentially saying to the aide to Paxton that he's not going to be complicit in a cover-up of what is absolutely, the evidence of corruption, alleged corruption. You have the person from Paxton's office saying that get this, the Paxton's person saying, quote, the Christian thing to do would be to deal with this in secret. Just to have folks like Jeff Leach and Dustin Burrows and Briscoe Cain, who we mentioned, have those people come and talk privately to the Attorney General and get some answers, and not be airing all this out in public. And this is after some Republicans had called out, including Leach, had called out Paxton for this whistleblower lawsuit that he wanted taxpayers to pay for. And the aide to Paxton says to Leach that it would be the biblical way to handle it. To do it privately, which I've read my Bible cover to cover. I'm sure you have as well. I don't know where in there it says anything about covering up corruption or covering for people who are alleged to have engaged in corruption, where that is a biblical thing or a Christian thing. This is just one of those things a lot of grifters like to say. Look, Leach says in the exchange, hey, Ken has absolutely been my friend in the past, but I'm not going to allow our past friendship to get in the way of me doing my sworn duty to my constituents and to Texas taxpayers. And in this situation, that would be to ask real questions about it. Remember how this all got kicked off, Chad, and the speaker has talked about this. Dave Phelan did an interview within the last week where he said, hey, the whole way this got started was Paxton asked for that settlement money to be approved out of tax dollars. The speaker didn't agree that that was a good use of tax dollars. And so all they did was wanted to ask questions. And so you had Paxton invited to appear before the Texas House Appropriations Committee. They're the ones who write the budget for the state of Texas. He wouldn't answer their questions. You had Leach privately raising these concerns with Paxton's office via text message, which we now know because of the Dallas Morning News reporting. None of this was a surprise to the Attorney General of Texas. And I found this morning, just kind of perusing around, everybody's sharing different things about this online, a really interesting website that answers a lot of the questions about this. It's called PaxtonImpeachment.com. It's not my website, but I've looked at the information, Chad, and it looks to all be legit. It's got all the latest developments, a lot of the questions that have been raised by the critics of the impeachment. All the questions are answered right there at PaxtonImpeachment.com. It's just another example, the stuff in the morning news today, just another example of how those who are supporting Paxton will say almost anything. Calling people like Briscoe Cain and Jeff Leach liberals or the liberal establishment,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous.